This is episode 33 of the Ownstream Podcast, featuring Gina Savage and Mike Perkins. Well, so welcome to the Ownstream Podcast. I guess we'll just we usually do an intro. We can do the intro right here. Okay. So I'm Stephen Shelley.
I'm Teresa Scoba.
And this is a unique experience for us. We're sitting outside of this absolutely gorgeous home in Southern Oregon with our new friends, Gina and Mike, who are graciously hosting us here for a few nights. And we found them through Airbnb. They have these incredible reviews. It was the perfect setting that we thought we wanted to experience. And then we arrived and it's been magical. It really has been. And so as we've talked to you, our listeners, about, we're on this trip. We're currently in Southern Oregon. We're headed north tomorrow. And one thing we wanted to do while we were on the road is talk to people that we met, we connected with, and that we found interesting and relevant for our podcast and our show. And so we're extremely excited to introduce you to these two. And I think, so just to describe to you the setting, actually, Teresa, why don't you describe the setting, kind of where we are and
Sure.
where this conversation is taking place and at what time and what's happening around us.
Sure. So we found Mike and Gina because we were looking to stay on a farm here in the Applegate Valley in Southern Oregon. And we were really drawn to their Airbnb post because it was really warm and excited, and it was clear that they loved what they were doing and that people had felt that who came to stay with them. And so we happened here upon their farm, and we just immediately felt at home. And so we're sitting outside on their beautiful deck, and you may hear, hopefully, or what we hear is crickets and sprinklers watering their beautiful lush grass and farm here, and new pasture. And we're sitting outside on the deck and around their table, all four of us together. And this is, the first interview we've done in person. So it's really a warm, cozy, magical atmosphere, which is just perfect for the context of the conversation we're going to have, I think.
Definitely. There's cows nearby.
There's cows. Yeah, there's a couple of really lovely dogs. Our daughter's fast asleep upstairs after a lively day at the farmer's market and roaming the farm. So it's really, it's a wonderful evening.
So to begin, I think it'd be great to hear from both of you. And by the way, we have one microphone. We're passing it around. So there may be some little pauses in between. Mike can't wait to get to the microphone. He's dying to tell his story. But I think to begin with, it'd be interesting to hear from you both, and kind of by way of introduction, just to kind of share with us and our listeners about kind of how you would describe your life before what we know to have been a very special decision and commitment to come here and be in this setting. What drew you here? We'll get to that maybe after, but maybe describe a bit kind of what your life was like before this, as a way of maybe inviting people into your story and connecting with them, and subsequently inspiring folks to maybe take a similar leap and create something as beautiful as this. So would either of you prefer to start? We'll start with Gina. All right.
Ladies first.
Ladies first.
Into the microphone.
Okay, I'm Gina, and I come from a corporate background of interior design. So a lot of stress, a lot of long hours, a lot of early mornings, a lot of late nights, and just living a life of being in town and having a little cottage house and having a small little yard and going for a walk at night, and that was it. Start all over the next day. So recently, 3 years ago, when Mike and I purchased our farm out here in the Little Applegate it has really changed our lives. And I quit my corporate job and checked out of all the stresses of expectations of corporations who overwork you and underpay you. And we decided to be free and have our farm and start a new life together out in open spaces, and where food and water and lifestyle is the most important thing in the world.
All right, Mike. Hi, I'm Mike. And I'm the other half of this duel. And my life before this, I was pretty much a surfer, living out of my motorhome, old surfer. I worked for 30 years, done many different jobs, from service industry and hotels, and owned painting businesses, and ended up owning a coffee shop. Was one of my last ventures. It was in Telluride, Colorado, which is another beautiful place in our country, and never owned any land, never owned a house, and kind of knew what I wanted, just never really found that spot. Ended up moving back to my hometown of Northern California, and decided I wanted to start growing food and be a little more sustainable, and just be more accountable for myself. And I had one dog then, and by the way, I'm the crazy guy. I was going to leave his dog everything in his his will. So that's kind of, that's who I am. So
Hazel.
Yeah, Hazel. She's my girl. But I met Gina. We had the same desires and vision and dreams, and they can come true. And we're sitting here right now, as Stephen told you, and we're in Southern Oregon. It's a beautiful spot. We found our property. We live off our land, and we are enjoying our life every day.
Great. I guess I have a few follow-ups, but Teresa, I think no, you go.
No, I wanted to ask. A lot of, we talk a lot on the podcast about following your bliss or following your excitement. Why, doing, so that being your guide, and a lot of people, like you had said, Mike, I think that you knew for a long time what you wanted, and you, Gina, knew for a long time that you were not happy, and you were doing the same thing over and over again. Maybe you guys can tell us a little bit about what happened to change that. So meeting, and then how you came together to create this dream. What changed and how did you follow that?
And Mike, include in there the story of you throwing out your cell phone. I think we need to hear that. Okay.
We'll do the same sequence.
All right, good. Yeah, good rhythm.
Okay, so cowgirl in Colorado for 30 years with vet assistant background, medical assistant in the vet industry, and also veterinarian industry, animal industry, and also interior design. So living on a huge ranch in Colorado and having an interior design business in town, and leaving Colorado to come back home to be closer to family, and always dreamed since a little child of having a stone house on the river in Oregon, and I just had to find the right partner. So in 2010, coming to Oregon to start a new life, and got a new job to begin with $4,000 in my pocket and my dog and my pickup, and that was it. So just struggling through life, trying to figure out how I could attain ranch life again. And I started, before I even got my job, I started OSU Extension as a master gardener in order to meet the right people in the field that I wanted to be involved in, with so many resources and so many connections in our valley of the Rogue Valley, which is the most incredible place, I think, on the West Coast. So years of working interior design, I meet my sweetheart at my girlfriend's restaurant in Northern California. And that's what began my new life, with somebody who had the same dreams that I did. And as we were talking today about what we were going to say in this podcast, we always sit down and we talk about how when you have two people that can walk side by side and hold hands and go the same direction, shoulder to shoulder, you can do anything. You can absolutely accomplish anything in the world if you have the same goals together. And to me, that's so special, because Michael has never owned anything, any property in his life. And for me to get him to find the right property was just the beginning of our success. So now we sit here as Airbnb hosts with so many opportunities, and I'm looking at this sliver red moon that just is arising after the new moon in the solar eclipse, and we're just sitting out here looking through the oak trees and listening to the sprinklers and the crickets and the coyotes and meeting these beautiful people who are searching for the same thing in Southern Oregon. Stephen and Teresa with their beautiful child Sophia is just a new love, new growth, new friends, new beginnings, and we have inspired them, and it makes us feel great to have inspired them since we've only been here for 3 years. So Airbnb and meeting people in this community of Little Applegate has given us lots of opportunities and a collaborative environment to grow and help people change and help people come to this kind of life where life can be simple, and you can really figure out what the meaning is as you go through your journey. Michael?
Hi, I just need to get the question again here real quick.
So after knowing what you wanted for a long time and having dreams, how did you make that happen, I guess, and the story of you guys coming together? And you told us today you had to chase Gina for a while too.
Yeah, I just needed the question. So, because we have a lot to our story, we're going to try to fit it all in. So I would recommend you come up and visit us in Southern Oregon, and you can get the real gritty story. But for right now, I met Gina. I chased her for a year, and she finally went out with me.
Well, you did some very cool things, as you described.
Yes.
Give us a couple of examples, because I thought it was very beautiful. It wasn't like you were overwhelming. It didn't seem to me. It seemed very like you were mature about it. You gave her space, but every so often you would lob something rather exciting into her court, so to speak.
Right. Like I mentioned, I was living in my motorhome with my dog. So that would find me in different areas in California, because I was surfing up and down the coast, trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. And she finally agreed to go for a hike, and we hiked the Castle Craigs in Northern California in Dunsmuir.
We did the dome, dude.
So we summited the dome, which is you got to do the last part's a scramble. So you got to really trust each other. So for a first date, it was pretty special. And the topper was when we actually got off the mountain. She asked me if I wanted some cherry tomatoes and blueberries, and I was like, well, where'd you get these? And she said, I grew them. I'm like, whoa, this girl's on it. Like, I don't have tomatoes yet. And I came back with, would you like a cold beer? After our hike. And she said, yeah. So we've been together ever since. So then she convinced me to move to Oregon, which I probably wish I would have moved here 20 years ago with what I know now. But we looked for 2 years before we found our property. It takes time, and you really have to find out what you really want. And I wanted water. I'm a Pisces. I wanted to grow food. I wanted open space. I wanted space for my animals. And I would come up every week, every other week. She would say, yeah, I found the right place. I found the right place. I'd come up and I'd say, nope. And she would say, okay. And I'd say, okay, see you in a week. She was still doing the corporate thing, as she mentioned. So she was going after work and on weekends. And we finally found some land, and it was too expensive because there was 2 tax lots. Through her connections, she met the owner. We got a meeting with the owner. The owner liked us. She thought we would be good land stewards. After trying with, with one bank, we were denied a loan because Gina took a leave of absence from her job. So then there's obviously no income. So we went on our trip. We came back, applied for another loan, and we got it.
New Zealand.
Yeah, I took her to New Zealand for her 50th birthday, which was a dream of hers before I even met her. So because the owner wanted to have a good land steward, she held the property for us. We ended up buying one of the tax lots, and she kept the other tax lot, which is attached to the property. And she just did an owner financing with us a year later on that. So we were able to get all the property now. And we are now a successful little micro farm, I call it. We're 2 years into growing our own food and doing weekly market in Jacksonville. And we have a great following now, and we wanted to be known for our greens, and we're growing greens. And now we're thinking, why not do a harvest homestay?
And we're going to hire Stephen to snip all the greens. Veggies.
There you go.
So it is attainable. Just got to find your niche. But I just recommend just finding the property where you want to be, what's comfortable, and the rest will fall into place with just a lot of hard work and just being a good land steward for the land you end up purchasing. Oh, by the way, he wanted me to mention checking out of my old life. So on my last move from Northern California to Southern Oregon, I stopped at a gas station in Mount Shasta, and I actually was filling up with gas and getting ready, still hauling a trailer, and the final push. Actually, it was my greenhouse. I moved a whole greenhouse that I grew food in Northern California. I moved it up to our property here in Southern Oregon in Little Applegate Valley. And I threw my cell phone in the trash at the gas station, and just basically ended all communication because we have no cell service out here on our property. So it was no longer needed.
Check out.
And we have an old-fashioned landline, and if you want to leave a message, we'd love to hear from you. And if it's important, we'll call you back, especially if the cows are out. So he liked that part of the story.
It's very dramatic. It's kind of it feels to me like you had a moment, and maybe you had, and I know you had a moment too. You both had a moment. Maybe there are others too, but where you felt perhaps the allure of this, what we refer to it as the mainstream kind of way of living, the mainstream path. And maybe in your case, Mike, it was symbolized by this phone, which felt like a bit of a tether to a world that maybe didn't hold much interest for you. What I find beautiful about this is that you're towing a greenhouse, which is all about like plugging into the earth. Like this is going to sit on the ground. We're gonna drive stakes and hold this thing into the earth. It's like the antithesis of a cell phone. And I know that you, Gina, you told us last night about there was some interesting thing you wanted to do, and you approached your bosses, and they kind of balked at it, and then you made a very dramatic move in the direction of doing what you wanted to do, and then they showed their hand as being kind of duplicitous. And so to kind of maybe help us get some more context for what it felt like and what it looked like for you to make kind of a dramatic, it sounds like it was very dramatic in your case, Gina, and Mike in your case as well, decision like, all right, we're going to do something else. Maybe we don't quite know what that's going to be, but it's not going to be this. It's not going to be this other thing that I've done for some time. And you described your job, and both Teresa and I related to it as being, up at 4:30 at the desk at 6, and I get out of there at 6, and it's like you're in a washing machine all day. It's a spin cycle over and over and over and over again. As soon as you're done with something, bam, there's something else to do. That was my experience, and I kept feeling throughout my time at a corporate job like this can't be what this is supposed to be. This just can't be it. I can't sign up for that 100%. I can maybe do it today. I'm not gonna charge out the door right now, but this can't be it. There's got to be something more. And so I'm interested to hear about maybe some of those details if anything kind of comes to mind, particularly that story, Gina. But then to also maybe, I'll save the follow up for after that, because I want to hear some more specifics about nature and how that's appealed to both of you, because I know you both have big experiences with nature, water, land, animals, and maybe how that's it's kind of like a true north, maybe a magnet pulling you in this direction. But let's end all this kind of old life stuff first, because I think those specific details kind of help people kind of like, gosh, I'm doing the exact same thing. It helps to kind of connect them with your life and the dramatic, as it was in your case for sure, Gina, decision to, I'm out of here.
So when I first moved back home to be near family to the West Coast from Colorado, my initial search was open space and land and a historic barn and property on the river. But I had $4,000 to my name, and I needed a corporate job in order to be able to live. So with the interior design background, I looked at property. I had to make a choice because I knew that I couldn't live 30 minutes from town, have a barn, have a tractor, have land, have horses, have cattle, and try to work 60 hours a week all by myself. I knew I couldn't do it. So I had to make the decision to move to town, and I knew it was going to be my second choice. And everyone said, oh, you'll meet somebody, and then everything will be different. And I said, no, I don't want to meet anybody. I just want to be by myself. And finally, when Mike and I met, my life went back to my roots, which is being in the soil and raising cattle and rotating cattle and building fences. But the neatest thing about this property that I've never experienced before is it has 3 levels. So it has forest, and then it graduates down to level, beautiful, lush pastures. And then the next level is a riparian area along the riverside. So this is something I've never encountered. I've never had river, and I've never had forest. So we knew that we had to learn and educate ourselves. So with my Master Garden experience at OSU Extension, I knew that there was more resources that were available to us. So as our lives started changing, when I checked out of corporate world, I realized that these people were extremely selfish, and all it was making money for themselves and then just trying to pay as little as they could for somebody who was dedicated, like me. And when I asked for a month off work to go to New Zealand, they said no. And I said, okay, I quit. And all that process made me understand how important just having peace with somebody who had the same dreams. So going back to what your question was, Stephen, it's just the whole process of checking out of such a stressful experience. And I didn't, when you're in it, you don't realize it's so stressful until you get out of it for 2 weeks and you have a vacation, and then you come back and you say, "Oh my God, I can't function like this anymore." Yeah. So when Michael and I met, he took me to Fiji, and we took a 2-week vacation on the turquoise waters, and they were warm and peaceful. And I came back and I called him and I cried on my lunch hour, and I said, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't be yelled at by customers who are frustrated with me because I can't call them back because there's not enough help. There's not enough people to answer the phone. And it felt unfair to me because I gave 100 to 200% to my job, and it wasn't enough. Because corporations continue to cut back on expenses. Anyway, long story, here we are. And there's one thing that I wanted to say that Mike and I always talk about when we sit down at night and have dinner after a hard day of work, and we harvest our food, and we light a candle, and we hold hands, and we say a prayer, and we say what we're thankful for. And when we're looking out the window and we're eating our harvested vegetables, and we're eating salad and greens and tomatoes, and we're looking at the cows in the pasture, and we say, wow, those girls are out there turning grass into beef, or organic beef, and we can just watch them turn grass into beef, and it's just such a beautiful thing for us. And so we can harvest the beef, and we know it's organic. We know it's there's no hormones or steroids. We know it's cared for and loved for, and to me, that's full circle. That's a complete ranch lifestyle that I've always dreamed of having, and here we are.
Here we are.
You want me to repeat?
You want to
repeat the question?
You want to chime in?
No, it's beautiful. Gosh, I have a few follow-ups. I'm sure Teresa does too. Well, I want to hear more from Mike. So we have you living in this mobile unit. We're living in a mobile unit here, which already says to me, like, here's a guy who's not exactly signing up for the 9 to 5. But it sounds like you did this and that. You were kind of a jack of all trades, if you will. Traveling, surfing. Was that your priority? Was kind of like getting in the water? No, I know for surfers, that's like this. That's it. Everything kind of takes 4th, 5th place. It's like surfing is 1, 2, and 3 for serious surfers, and you are a serious surfer. I mean, you travel the world. You have a place in Fiji, which allows you to go out and kind of experience that water in a big kind of way. But nevertheless, you weren't fulfilled by that. And so maybe you could talk to kind of like what that was like and why this portrait of, maybe it was the farm and the stone barn, the historic barn and the stone house that Gina mentioned earlier. What was it about that seemed more exciting than the lifestyle you were leading before?
Well, once you get older, I understand why guys stop surfing. Just because you just can't function at the level you used to. Obviously, I still surf. I was surfing in Fiji for 20 years. It sounds glamorous, but when I took Gina, we were living out of a backpack and staying on people's decks and again, my partner Gina, she talked me into, why don't you have your own house over here and not have all your stuff at someone else's house? And I said, okay. And another success story on that note, not to get off the question, but she went for a walk, came back and told me, I found our house. And sure enough, it was an American guy. He was getting older and he wanted to sell his house, and he did an owner financing, and before you know it, we own a house in Fiji. Sounds glamorous. It is glamorous when you're there. It's a lot of work. It's you have to fight the jungle back. It's it's something overseas, but we cherish it. It's a beautiful country. We try and go there when it's wintertime in Oregon, during the rainy season, when we cannot grow our food and be successful. And then back to the cell phone event, being a surfer, it was like I called it my wireless leash. When you're a surfer, you have a leash tied to your leg so you don't lose your board in the ocean and in the surf. And that's what I called my cell phone, a wireless leash. And I just didn't want to be tied down to it anymore. And I just wanted to come forage the land and live off the land. And we've accomplished that. I don't know if I've answered Stephen's questions correctly. I kinda,
right or wrong.
Yeah, I'm just kind of, just telling the story here. And where would you like to go next?
Teresa, do you want to?
Well, I want to talk about, I know they both had a very specific vision for what they wanted and bringing that to life, but did you have any follow-ups on this
No,
first?
that sounds
great. Okay, so I know having talked to you both yesterday about what you wanted, and you asked us very so what do you want? What are you dreaming about, right? And I know, Gina, you mentioned that you wanted the stone house on the land and that you had found that in your diary. Maybe tell us a little bit about that. But I want to ask you both about the vision you had, what you wanted, and how you brought that to life, basically, and how you merged that vision. Because I know you both had specific things that were important to you, and then you managed to bring that to life together here on this property. So what was the vision, and how did you bring that to life?
So this property really wasn't my first. This is not what I imagined. My vision was more open ranch land, more cattle country, more open space. And I wanted a stone house on the river. I wanted a historic barn, and I have none of those. But the interesting thing is, be careful, because what you think you want and what you end up with, it seems like whatever falls in your lap, if you're doing things right, seems like the powers above us know better than we know. And when you have a partner that you can both accomplish your dreams together and merge those two dreams, it's more beautiful than you ever imagined. So we talk about that, walking side by side with the same goals, and it really does make a huge difference when you have the power of two people to do those things, and you can compromise. I never had had labs, and Mike always wanted to have water for the labs, for the dogs, the water dogs. And, it's just an amazing thing that we have done together with his ability to grow the most beautiful food that I've ever seen. And he never was a master gardener, but he's far better than most master gardeners I've ever met. So the love of the land, for both of us, my strengths are cattle and pasture management and fencing. And Mike's strengths are growing the most beautiful food. And my other strength is design. So I think with the Airbnb and being able to make this fabulous presentation of furnishings and accommodations, and it all just came together in a very powerful environment. So we just, with the help of our neighbors and the people in this community, we feel like this is the best choice we could have ever made in our lives together.
I ditto that, and I didn't know what I wanted. Again, I was living in my motorhome with my dog, and I just know I wanted to grow food. It's very satisfying, especially when you feed other people. You're not going to get rich off it, but the wealth is just the satisfaction of feeding other people good food and the joy they get out of it. And I enjoy just playing in the dirt. I think the soil will give you what you need to heal yourself in respect to what you eat. You are what you eat. Other than that, it took Gina and I, she keeps telling us, it took us 50 years to find each other. So if whoever's single out there listening, there is hope. Believe there is hope. Just took 50 years to find a good one. So I'll leave it on that note.
That's beautiful. You just said something, Mike, that I'd like you to talk about more. The satisfaction of growing food and nourishing others, and how that called to you. Like, one thing we talk about a lot on this podcast is, what is your calling? And many people never pause to think about that. But often, as my instinct is in the both of your cases, like, you are now fully, it seems to me, like, in your calling. Though you may not have ever necessarily written that down and said, okay, I'm going to do this now, and try to convince yourself that it was possible. It just sort of unfolded in a very beautiful way. But if I were to sort of, from the outside looking in, like, you just maybe presented it in that way, like the idea of nourishing others with good, healthy food that you have grown. Talk about that satisfaction as we see a spider
Chandeliering down.
Yes. This is part of doing an outside interview. Right behind Mike, by the way, are his two beautiful dogs, Norman and Hazelnut, and they're asleep on their beds.
How beautiful Hazel is these days.
She's a beauty. She's a beauty. I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was Oscar Wilde, or some great writer said, my greatest satisfaction is an open notebook, having finished a wonderful day, and my dog kind of sleeping just by my side. And the presence of these dogs it's wonderful. They're both just completely passed out, because life on a environment like this wears out a dog. Whereas my poor dog, our dog, a wonderful dog, Magic, like, is a city dog, and we have to go to great lengths to exercise her. So, but anyway, these dogs are just out. Like, a half an hour ago, they were running up through the field chasing something. I don't know what it was. We couldn't see it. But deer, probably. Yeah. But to talk about the call of nature in that way, like, like, what is it about that appeals to you? What is that satisfaction like? Because we've seen you now, at least in these last 48 hours, 72 hours, kind of from start to finish, like in the garden, dealing with the food, clipping the food, preparing it, putting it together, taking it to the farmer's market and selling it, giving it, nourishing others with it. Like, we've seen kind of the cycle. And at every stage, you seem totally lit up. Like, this is like, I am having so much fun. This is like, and maybe it gets to another thing I wanted to talk to you both about was how do you now think of work? Whereas before, like in your case, Gina, you were working 6 to 6, answering calls and, completely stressed out. Now work seems to me for the both of you to be very, very different than that. But so start with that, kind of digging in a little bit to the satisfaction that food and nourishing others brings to you, what that's about, and maybe we could then kind of get into, nature and I think even like talk about kind of what your normal day is like.
You still move on.
It's my turn. Well, everybody needs a purpose in life. And we all wonder what that purpose is going to be. And if it's you're doing the right thing, like you said, you get caught up in the corporate world, you have no choice. It's just a 9 to 5, pay the rent, whatever. We've all been there. We've all done it. So I like working with my hands. Again, I like working outside. And like Stephen said, it's work. Don't get me wrong. I probably work harder now than I ever have, but it's joy, and like he said, it brings satisfaction to grow things and to share them with other people and watch them just light up, and they're so thankful that you're growing good food. Especially in this day and age with all the pesticides that are used. And I don't know if anyone out there knows, but Jackson County is one of the first non-GMO counties in the country, which is very big because some of these corporations have a big stronghold. It was a fight. It wasn't easy. That said, you just get up with the sun and you just nourish. You nourish the land, and the land will repay you. On that note, here's Gina's back. She's cold.
So when I first moved to Oregon, like I said before, I joined the Master Garden program. And we had these flyers at OSU Extension that had Farmtofork events. So I started looking at the calendar, and I started booking these Farmtofork dinners that were throughout the summer here in Southern Oregon. And they were expensive. They were $75 a plate. And I bought 6 plates and made reservations, and I had no idea who was coming with me. I didn't know how I was going to pay for it. And I did it because I was, it's what they say about set the table and people will come. It's the same thing. I was planning my future to have connections, and I wanted to meet people who were passionate about local food. And they inspired me. I went to Calhoun, I went to Willow Wit Ranch, I went to the Hanley Historic Farms, I went to several local venues, and I met local chefs, I met local growers, people who grew buffalo, people who grew greens, people who grew berries. And I knew that that's what I wanted to be a part of my life. I didn't know I was going to meet Michael. I just knew that that was going to be my lifestyle someday. And when Michael and I got together and he took me to his greenhouse on the Sacramento River, I could not believe the basil, the large leaf basil, was so huge and so tender, and his tomatoes, and the way he nurtured his dogs, the way he nurtured his food, made me realize that he would nurture me as well, the same way. And as we began our life together, we started talking about doing farmers markets. And then he started doing them in Dunsmuir on Thursday, and it was 150 degrees outside on Thursday afternoon, and it was a flop. And it was just crazy. So he would have all these vegetables already harvested on Thursday night that he didn't sell at the farmer's market in Dunsmuir, and he'd bring them to me here in Oregon with, just unveiling these ice chests full of food. And it was so exciting for me to see his joy and his... Right now he's smiling, looking at me, and remembering those days where he would open up his ice chest, and it was just unbelievable, the food. I would take pictures of his food because it was so gorgeous. So we started talking about doing farmers markets here, and how are we going to do that? When are we going to find a place? And when we found this place, we did Talent Farmers Market. It was Friday night. It was hot. It was terrible, So then we found Jacksonville on Sunday morning. And this has been so gratifying for both of us. In fact, when we start opening shop on Sunday morning, I get the chills because people are lining up. They can't wait to buy our food. And I get to bring out my designer hat and make the table fabulous and attract the people with color and flowers. And now we've been... selected or found, how you say it, by a chef in Ashland who is now coming to harvest food from us every weekend because of our presentation, because how we've incorporated flowers with our edible flowers with our vegetables. And he has now recognized how beautiful that is, and he's doing some amazing things. So if I had $1 million for everybody who said, "Oh my God, this is the most beautiful presentation I've ever seen." So it's just been, I can apply my design skills to the presentation, and Mike can apply his growing skills with teas and nurturing and soils. And it's just been something that I really didn't think we were going to get this far so quick in 3 years.
Yeah, I just want to say that we spent the day today with Mike and Gina. First of all, the joy and the love is like so palatable listening to you guys here talking about what you do here. But yeah, we spent the morning. We woke up together, harvesting the greens, and then we followed them to the farmers market after we got Sophia up and fed her, and the greens were beautiful in the garden, and then we got there and they had bagged them with beautiful flowers on them, and they were dewy, and it was gorgeous. It was gorgeous. So, and I don't think I told you guys this story, but for our bridal shower, my bridesmaids thing the day we were getting married, my best friends took me. We were out for coffee, and they were going to take me on the surprise thing. And I said, all I really want to do with my life is have my hands in the soil picking kale, because I just love the leafy greens, And they were taking me to a farm for our day to hang out together. So anyway, it's I love that. In Encinitas, before we lived there. Anyway, it's I love this more than anything. So
before you lived there.
Yeah. Ah. So anyway, it resonates. Well, a few things, I guess. I'd love to talk about kind of what a day in your life is like here, what it's like to live here in the Little Applegate Valley, as well as the community that's, so what a day is like here, and also what it's like to live here with the community you're building. Because you guys have talked so beautifully about what it feels like to us, about what it feels like to be a part of the community and how that's forming, and maybe how your notion of community has changed as a result of living here and being part of this.
Oh, he's giving it to me again.
Back into sequence.
A day in the life.
A day in the life of a farmer.
So I think my favorite story about our community this year is Michael was in Fiji still this spring, and I was out mowing and raking and fixing fences and doing all the stuff around here. And our neighbor Lee came out on his four-wheeler, and he's 89, and he said, "Howdy, neighbor, when are we going to get some cows around here to graze this grass?" And I said, "Well, as a matter of fact, Lee, I have called Martha, and I've already arranged for her to bring over her cows to graze our grasses this year. And if you would like me to manage your fences and your property, we can do some rotational grazing and introduce more cattle on your property as well." And he said, "I thought you would never ask." So that gave me such joy, because that's my life. That's my life is learning how to manage cattle and pastures and grazing and raise organic beef. And that gave me what I needed for this place. And we weren't sure how that was going to all work out with the two dingoes that never saw a cow in their life. Yeah. And this surfer boy who's never really known cows either. And it's just been a beautiful thing, because Mike loves to tease the cows and chase them with a shovel and keep them out of the fence. And the dogs just love to lay in the grass with them. And it has turned out to be a really nice thing for a collaborative effort, because we have Martha, who's on another ranch, who's bringing us cows on our property, and we're managing on somebody else's property. So just to bring the community together has been a beautiful thing. We have neighbors come by and say, "Hey, I need some tomatoes, and I'll bring you whatever I have for trade." So we do a lot of trade. And that's been fun. Our neighbor Connie Fowler brought me a box of Triscuits for a couple of tomatoes the other day. And just last week, Michael and I finally took a trip together to the coast just to get away for a couple of days. And the day we left, the cows got out, other cows got loose. They all jumped in together. We had 17 steers mixed in with our 7 mama cows and a baby. And all the neighbors jumped in, and they all sorted cows. They moved, they chased, everybody just showed up and took care of it. So everybody calls each other, everybody takes care of each other and watches out. It's a community that if you were to close the road off to this valley, you would have bread, you would have beer, wine, beef, chicken, pork, greens,
wine, weed,
wood,
fancy
cheese. Again, should we say cheese again? Pastries. We have the most fabulous pastries and bread that are delivered from Rise Up to our mailbox every Saturday. And we have EFU, we have the oldest water rights in the ditch. So if we all had to be sustainable as a community, we could all survive, and we could all support each other with what we have to offer to bring to the table. And to me, that's the most beautiful thing in the world.
Yeah, as she says, it's priceless. What was the question again?
So,
life on the farm.
What's your average day? What time do you get up?
I get up at dark 30 in the morning. Well,
7.
You're up early.
As soon as the sun comes up.
Yeah.
Because we have to irrigate, and we do a lot of irrigating here. And as Gina mentioned, we have water rights, and I highly recommend it if anyone's ever looking for any property to
Water rights.
get some water rights. They're very important if you're going to grow food and raise cattle. They come with your property. But I'm up early in the morning, watering every morning, moving sprinklers, making sure we have water pressure from our irrigation ditch. But the first thing I do is open the greenhouses up so they can breathe and get light, natural sun. The sides roll up. Feed the dogs. Give the cows apples. Oh, sounds like a vacation around here. So we have since we irrigate a lot, you either have to mow it or you have to chew it down. So that's why we have the cows for the pastures. So there's a lot of mowing just around the property. We have a lot of nice lawns. But again, it's a lot of mowing. I do a lot of. I make my own teas, natural teas that I aerate and foliage spray on my plants that are aerated to create good microbes, and that's one of the reasons why my food's so alive is because I feed it live organic matter in the soil and through the leaves. We do a lot of wood. We're always picking up wood, cutting wood, chopping wood, splitting wood, stacking wood.
Clearing the forest.
Yeah. The, fuel reduction in the forest. That's part of the land steward of this property. Right now, as we speak, there is actually a fire out near Applegate Lake, and it's been smoky for Stephen and Teresa. So they really haven't even, as beautiful as they say it is, they haven't even seen it clear and crisp. But they say that's not going to happen until it rains. And Stephen said something to me today. He's like, I just don't see any holes in this whole area, and that's probably the only hole is just fire danger. Mm-hmm. And on that note, I've been pushing all my irrigation to the forest now and kind of creating a natural boundary and moistening the exterior just in case we do have a fire, and it just starts from thunder, lightning storms, and they hit the ground, and before a couple days later there's something smoldering, and so it's something that it's very dangerous up here, but the guys are up here working, and it's just smoky. So between all that, we've got equipment, we have to work on, and as far as mowers and tractors and pumps, and so that need fencing. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. The cows are always getting through the fence. And like she said, I'm always chasing them, getting them out of the
blackberries.
The blackberries, the blackberries. They're a weed up here. I mean, they're great. Trust me, I water them because I want big fat blackberries because they taste so good. But it's an ongoing thing, is the cutting back the blackberries. That said, Gina mentioned OSU is Oregon State University, and it's an extension program up here, and it's very resourceful. We signed up and did a land stewardship class together. I was telling Stephen that probably a third of the class was people from California coming up, buying 20 acres, buying 40 acres, and not knowing a thing and what to do. Whether they have star thistles out in their pasture or you name it. So I highly recommend it to anyone looking for property to attend a land stewardship class, because they just really teach you how to be a good land steward for your property, or if you're looking for property, what to look for in respect to what you want to do on your land. So I'll leave it at that right there.
One thing I did today was I looked you both up on Facebook. Are either of you on Facebook?
No.
You're not on Facebook.
That went in the garbage with the cell phone.
Yeah, I was going to say wireless tether.
Never ever signed up.
Never signed up.
Neither one of us do any social media.
None at all. And was that a decision you both made, or was it just
No,
sort of like you just knew, oh, I don't want to have anything to do with
We've
that?
never really gotten into it.
Never wanted to get
Yeah.
into it. Okay. That's just, I wanted to be sure to raise that because I think that most people listening to this have a Facebook account, I would imagine.
And a cell phone.
And and a cell phone. Do you have a cell phone? You do. Okay. Well, I think a lot of people who are stuck in the... Is that the cat? There's a cat around here too.
Katniss Aberdeen.
We got our barn cat.
The barn cat is nearby. She usually pops out around this time. It's about 9:30. I know a lot of people that we know and that we've talked to feel called into nature in various ways. And it's primarily, I think, because so much of our life has become about being in manufactured spaces with manufactured tools, completely divorced from, you said, Mike, you get up with the sun, like completely divorced from the natural cycle of how maybe mankind is more naturally to live in this environment. And it's because the environment that has been created is so artificial and so antithetical to our nature. Talk about this call, this relationship to nature that you both have, and maybe juxtapose it with what was before. Like Gina, you talk about your old life, and you mention over and over stress. And from what we've seen here, there's very little, if none of that, in this environment. And Mike, you don't seem to be the type who would maybe even get too stressed out because you're so friendly and positive and upbeat. And but this call to nature, this dream that you now occupy, you live in nature. You're here, and you're not only living in nature, but you're relating to it very directly. Animals, plants, ground, light, water, elements, all of it, fire, all of it. You're thinking about all of it. Like you just described, creating like a moisture barrier around your property. It's like, no one has to think about that if you're going, if you're driving down Highway 5 tomorrow morning to your day job. Like that's not your reality. Right. But to many people who would hear that, there's something that echoes in our souls about how that's meaningful, more so than trying to get to work on time. So maybe from your experience, your vantage point of tending to nature, relating to it, stewarding it on a daily basis, talk about that call, what it feels like, what the experience of that is like to be in that mix every day, and speak to the people who might really be starved for that, because I know we were starved for this type of experience. That's exactly why we're here. Mm-hmm.
Steven's got it. He knows how to hand me the microphone first now.
Sequence.
I think the biggest thing that I've experienced here on this property is the constant lulling of the river and the birds or the crickets. So no matter how frustrated you may get from something that's happening, or if you're stressed about something, which we do have stress, we do have time frames and limitations and stuff here, you can stop for a minute and say, oh my gosh, look where I am, and look at this opportunity that most people have never experienced. I can't believe that I can walk up to the forest and harvest morels in the wild, or I can go down to the river and just hang and just calm my soul. And we have had so many people here at Airbnb and stay with us as family or guests that just can't believe how quiet it is and how bright the stars are, and just the day-to-day routine. Most people don't even recognize what's really going on, and just if you listen and just stop and put your phones away and just walk around and watch nature. The birds are unbelievable in the spring. They're so loud at 5 a.m. in the summer that you can't sleep. And we get woken up by hummingbirds or blue jays or the mockingbirds or whoever's in season. Mm-hmm. And we wake up just looking at each other with a smile on our face. It's just beautiful. So the day-to-day routine and just learning, I think, is one of the most important things is to learn from the animals. To watch them, observe their routine, observe when they eat, when they sleep, what they do, how they rest in the middle of the day when it's hot. And I watch the cows and I watch how they rest and they conserve their energy when it's 2 o'clock and it's the hottest point of the day. And the Spanish people do that. I learned from people in Mexico to rest when it's too hot to work. And I do that. I get up early and I'm outside, and then I come in when it's 2 and rest, and then go back out and work again. And I think that's probably the most beautiful thing that I've learned about existing with the animals on the land is just take rest. It's okay to take a rest at 2 or 3 and come in and just re-energize and go back out when it's cool again. That's all I have. Yeah.
Okay. So how the land is...
Well, in your case, Mike, I think you're somebody who was a surfer for many years, and that's a direct relationship to nature.
Correct.
You're dealing with waves, you're dealing with timing, you're dealing with movement,
Mother Nature,
water, obviously. But now this is a complete experience. It's not like you're gonna go to nature, spend an hour in nature,
right,
hang out in there, have this very intense experience. Now it's this lifestyle. It's this whole thing. And maybe speak about like how that has impacted you or affected you. Do you find? I'm always interested in how when you read about Native Americans, they have instincts that I have a hunch that I have that are just asleep. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if an enduring amount of time in nature begins to awaken a kind of instinct, or if not an instinct, just a rhythm that might feel more true to oneself than whatever was before. Maybe these isolated injections of nature in a high velocity. Now you're in it all the time.
Right. And on that note, being a surfer, you're always watching the weather.
That's right.
And because it's all about timing and getting when Mother Nature all comes together and gives you that perfect wave, that gives you that perfect ride, that gives you that that perfect feeling. I can relate that to farming now. I'm always watching the weather. Telling Gina, every morning, it's gonna, I'll give her the 3-day forecast, and she said, yeah, whatever, and and she's more of a in the moment 2-day, and I'm more of a, okay, well we better look out because it's going to be triple digits.
Drama.
Yeah, and that just relates to I am kind of an old doomsdayer personality. Hence the reason I'm out here in the bush growing my own food and living off the land. But it brings so much joy. As hard as you work, you come in, your back aches, you're tired, but the satisfaction just outweighs the it's just what you do. You don't even think twice about it. And we work 7 days a week, as she mentioned. We tried to go somewhere this summer one time, and the cows got out, and I tell her every summer, okay, we're not going anywhere, we're not leaving. And so it's just, that's what you do. You just get up, and sometimes you think, well, maybe it's Groundhog Day again. I'm just moving the sprinklers and from one side of the pasture to the other. But said and done, it's one of the most gratifying things you can do, and is just nurture the land, and the land will nurture you. That's pretty much how I see it.
Cool. Teresa.
I know we need to wind down soon. So I was going to say, we haven't talked directly about Airbnb, and we wanted to do that. Maybe it's a good segue to talking about how people can come here and experience this with you. Maybe tell us a little bit about, how you've incorporated Airbnb into your work here, and, both as a source of income and as part of the experience here as well, because I think it's both. Talk a little bit, I guess, about how you use Airbnb and how you created this, and then we can talk about how people can come visit you here. Sure. Did you want to add anything on that?
Well, I think, we've done a lot of Airbnb. Many people listening to this,
a very special Airbnb,
do a lot of. They stay at a lot of Airbnbs. We've done a few Airbnbs on this trip, and in the last year, we've been to 10 or so. I don't know, but this one really stands out as attention to detail. There's care. It seems around in every inch of everything we've seen. There's just a hint of care. It's just I can't believe it.
It is that like you've thought of everything.
You've really thought of everything.
You'll reach out for a certain kitchen implement and it'll be there, or they had their freshly baked bread in the basket waiting for us. There were so many. There was coconut milk in the fridge, and how did you know that I don't use dairy? It was great. It was just
Yeah, I'm wondering if there's a way that you go about it that affords you maybe more time to maybe you build in more time between guests. I don't know,
or it's just part of.
But it's just kind of flabbergasting, honestly, because we've been to a lot of Airbnbs and they range. They're always really pretty good. But this one is just it's almost like I feel like the Oregon Tourism Board has come to you and said, "Listen, we need people to come live in Oregon." And they're going to come through your place, and we're going to send you a secret document that tells you all of their instincts and what they like, and then you're going to prep the place so that it's as if they've just stepped into a magical wonderland. Because it sort of feels like that. When we pulled in, you guys were sort of waiting for us, and you helped me back in. We walked inside, there was fresh food. It seems like every 3 or 4 hours you're bringing food to us, freshly picked food. There's just so many little details and subtleties. I mean, I can't tell you how great this place is, but from maybe the point of view of a host, are there things that you do specifically that help you get to that level? Because within Airbnb, you're what's called a quote super host, and I don't know how many percentages of people are super hosts, but if I can't imagine there being a better experience than this. Anyway, so talk about kind of how you go about preparing for guests, and what is the type of thinking that affords you this sixth sense for creating this type of experience for people, because it's really, really very special.
Here we go. I'm first again. So this is really an interesting beginning to Airbnb. Is when Michael and I first had this place under contract, I brought my cousin and my best cowgirl girlfriend out here, and the three of us sat on the river on the rocks, and we all just sat there and collaborated on, okay, what should we do? How can we make this place profitable and stay home? And my cousin, who's traveled, she's from Sacramento, and she said Airbnb. And I said, what? She said, Airbnb, check it out. I said, okay. And my best girlfriend, cowgirlfriend, said, use what you have. And in a 2-hour conversation, those are the two things that I remember. So I told Mike what we talked about, and I started really researching Airbnb to figure out that this could be the best thing that ever happened to us, to be able to stay home and make a little bit of an income to help pay the mortgage, and try to figure out how we could use the furnishings we had and the way that the layout of this house was. So this house was on the market and under contract for probably 3 months before anybody bought it. And several people looked at it in the valley and nobody knew what to do with it, because it's like 2 condominiums put together with a breezeway in between. And it's like 2 of everything, 2 master suites, 2 kitchens, 2 living rooms. And nobody knew how to make this work. And so the Airbnb allowed us to have private quarters and have guests, to have people come and stay and experience the river and the forests and the pastures, and have semi-privacy and be able to stay in a remote area where they wake up at night because it's so quiet they can't sleep. So we have turned this into an amazing opportunity for people like Stephen and Teresa to see what the other people do besides the concrete jungle. But just bringing in our scraggly leftover furniture and trying to make something of it was where I came in with the design abilities and background, and just tastefully placing furnishings and recognizing that people needed fresh baked goods and coconut milk or whatever it is. My design abilities came in, and Mike's abilities came in with the outside part, with the landscaping and the trimming of the lawns and the flowers and the trees. And so we discovered that our 2 labs, especially Norman, has become our mascot. And Norman now has a job, and he gets to be the greeter and the play dog with everybody he can show the river to. And even Michael has a job. Michael can show off his greenhouses and be the perfect host. Michael has become this amazing host to show people the property. And together, we brought this place in. We made this place into something that we never dreamed of. Our very first guest was a secret Airbnb employee from Portland. So she booked our place, and she worked for Airbnb, and their job is to go travel and see how people were doing. So she went to Jacksonville, and they brought us a gift of Quaddy North beautiful wine as a gift, and she taught me some things about gratitude and showing love for other people by gifts of really quality things. So as an organic farm, we decided that we wanted to try to do as many organic products as we could, and support local venues like local coffee and local bread, and local try to beef. Do organic juices and things, and local beef. So it's been an amazing opportunity for us to try to promote more growth, more local stuff for our community.
And that we can just pass on to our guests. But back to Gina said, use what you have, and we used what we had, and we. Don't get it wrong. I didn't want anybody coming over. You kidding me? What do you mean we got strange guests coming here? The first people, as she mentioned, their Airbnb, I'm like, it's a setup. Okay, so that's how I got into it.
The doomsdayer.
Yeah, the doomsdayer, right? we've learned along the way, and now we really cherish the people that come to our property, and we want to share with them what we have. And it is so special, as they mentioned, that it changes every guest in one way or another. From when they show up and when they leave, so it makes it a lot easier for us to be the super host status that we have now.
Tell them about Ethan.
Oh, Ethan! Ethan, he was a little boy, and and Gina and I don't have kids. That's why we got dogs. Well, I got dogs. She's stepmom. So we don't really allow kids here. That said, Gina has a really good intuition, because Stephen and Teresa have a kid. And I don't question her judgment anymore. And so we don't even, we have no preconceptions anymore with who shows up. And that's, I think, the beauty of it now, because, everybody's equal, and everybody's coming for the same reason, and what they get out of it is what they get out of the stay here. And it seems to be everybody gets something. But Ethan was a 10-year-old boy. He was probably a little bit autistic, city boy. Never been, doesn't get out in the forest much, and of course, Norman, my yellow lab, they bonded, and they lost his Frisbee, and they bought him a new Frisbee because, he loves to play Frisbee in the river. And when they left that morning, he literally hugged Norman and cried, and got in the car and cried all the way out in the driveway. And, we're just standing there and waving goodbye, and it's just very gratifying just to touch people's lives like that, and we're very thankful that we have the opportunity to do Airbnb here, and as Gina said, it just worked out for the right reasons in respect to our property, and we're 2 years now, 2 full summers, 3 summers, 3 summers old, or 3 summers new. And going strong, and we'll continue to keep producing food on our property, and keep producing our cattle, and the guests that come can see, and they can make their own decisions, because there's a lot of people right now looking at Southern Oregon, just trying to make a life change, lifestyle change, which is awesome. And what I was trying to get to the point in respect to Airbnb is we'll just be, we'll be here next summer, and we'll be here the next summer, and it just keeps getting better, and we keep getting better people, and more people that want to get engaged in the whole event and atmosphere here, and just learn how to prosper off their property after they make the leap. That's the hardest part. So that said, with these two here, we started our first harvest homestay this morning. They're 0600.
We got pictures to prove
Yep.
it.
Yeah.
Right.
And so if anyone's out there listening and wants to come up and just do a harvest homestay, we'd love to have you, whether it's harvest for the market or just harvest for yourself, and for your own dinner and your own well-being. So on that note, I'll give it back to Stephen.
Oh, that's great.
Thank you, everybody out there, for listening.
Well, we tend to end our podcast with 3 questions we ask every guest, and they're kind of quick. It's not nothing too weird, but But these three questions kind of help us create a kind of continuum amongst all the episodes. And so anyway, I'll ask the first one. What book or books, up to say 3, a short list,
Can be one,
would you recommend that any person should read? And maybe either of you pick 1 or 2 that really come to mind.
All Creatures, Great and Small.
Companion planting for vegetables. You can learn a lot from that.
Companion planting.
Companion planting, what to grow with what.
Oh, that's great. Okay, Teresa.
What is the best meal you've ever had?
Grass-fed beef with fresh greens and big, beautiful Brandywine tomatoes.
I have to say a caprese in respect to the tomatoes. I grow what I like, and I love caprese. I love basil. I love tomatoes. And I could eat one every night in the summer.
I think you guys have had that the last 2 nights.
And those tomatoes are delicious.
Okay.
Sophia ate one whole today. I've never seen
She ate it
anything
like
like
an apple. She just picked it up and started eating it.
It's nothing like a homegrown tomato.
So the last question is, what have you learned in the last 30 days, which
recently.
means recently, that you think every human being should know?
Oh, that's a hard one.
Yeah.
I think getting to know your community and understanding why you live where you live and reaching out and just forming a bond with the people that are near to you because you need them. You need each other. And I think it's a beautiful thing to inspire each other. And I think I have recently realized what emotion comes over me when I inspire someone, including you guys. And it gives me the greatest joy ever in my life.
I agree with her in respect to the community. There's nothing like it. Living out here, and we're all out here taking care of each other. There's no one coming to save us or anything like that. But what I've learned, probably every human being should know, is just know what you're eating. I highly recommend just know what you're putting in your body.
Yeah, and so many people don't know that. There's a system that keeps us so divorced from knowing. We just go to a market and it's there. We don't know who picked it. We don't know who planted it. We don't know who grew it. We don't know where it was grown. What country it came from. How it was shipped here. What were those? There's infinite little steps that you guys kind of mimicked in a beautiful way today for us. That we got to experience, all these little steps that have to be taken, each of them significant in the process to getting it in front of you to eat, and that so many of us have no clue about in this type of society where this food system exists so out of our sight, out of our range, out of our understanding.
It's been one of the greatest joys seeing Sophia experience that here because she loves blueberries, for example, and they come out of the little plastic carton, and so here we brought her up to the blackberry bushes. She eats blackberries and blueberries every morning. So look, Sophia, and just like watching her eat that tomato whole. I mean, yeah, it's something that we want for her and for us too. So.
And in these rather uncertain times, knowing your community and being in a situation like this where you really care about each other, you look after each other without expecting some kind of recompense in any way, and being sustainable and sufficient. It feels like a very safe place. This location. I think we should wrap up. So I want to give you the chance to talk about maybe whatever you would like people to know about, maybe they want to come here or get in touch with you, how should they do that? What would be the best way for them to do that, through Airbnb or some other way?
Probably through Airbnb, because you could really get a concept of what we're all about here with the photos, and we continue to add photos with our guests, such as Teresa and Stephen harvesting for the market this morning. They will be added to our Airbnb posting. So find us at Surf Ranch on the Little Apple Gate at Airbnb in Jacksonville. Or you could find us at surfranch3@gmail.com. You could send us an email to inquire more about us.
Perfect.
And by the way, I asked them this morning if someone else had taken Surf Ranch 1 and 2. That was what was available, and they said, no, 3 is our lucky number. But it's very we'll link to the Airbnb profile. We'll have a link on the page to that, so that people, and the email. Yeah, we'll put that in there too, so that, and we'll cloak the email so you don't get filled up with spam. But we'll link over to that so people can click through and check you guys out. I guess our we haven't even thought about our URL for this episode, but I guess it should be ownstream.co/
Surf Ranch or
Surf Ranch. I think Surf Ranch. That's the easiest one. So ownstream.co/ Ranch. And, the theme I want to kind of conclude with, and then we'll be finished, is, the thing that strikes me about being with you two, being in your space, being in this intimate quarters of kind of living alongside you both, and then seeing how you are on the land, seeing how everything is so cared for. And also watching the two of you as you're talking here, because you're not like TED Talkers. We've had TED Talkers on our podcast, and they're wonderful. They're great. I'm not, this is not about that, but there's a tenderness and such a sweet love between the two of you, and it seems to pervade every part of this property. It seems to just be everywhere.
Totally, yeah.
And it seems to be in kind of how you are, like. You'll be eating out here in a very quiet way. There's nothing ostentatious, but there's a little light music playing. The dogs are relaxed. You can hear the cows lowing in the background, the river. It's really the cat meowing. But there's just such a sweetness that pervades everything here. And I guess that's really it. It's almost like we're used to people trying to create that, whereas it's clear to us that you're just creating it. It's just. That's who you are.
Very inspiring.
Very natural. So.
Thank you.
Anyway, thank you guys.
Thank you for
we're
being
very
so
grateful.
generous in every way.
Yeah.
With your time for this and everything you've given us.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the Ownstream Podcast. To learn more and connect with us, please visit ownstream.co or follow us on Twitter @Ownstream and Instagram @own_stream.